Our story starts in the idyllic, rolling green hills of Denbrook, where an eccentric shepherd named George Hardy, played by the incredibly charming Hugh Jackman, lives a simple life in a cozy mobile home. George isn't your average sheep farmer. He doesn't raise his flock for meat. He raises them strictly for their wool and, more importantly, for their companionship. But George has a secret, quirky habit. Every single night, after feeding them and treating them for a sheepskin disease called orf with a bright blue ointment, he pulls up a chair and reads classic murder mystery novels aloud to them. George assumes his flock is just listening to the soothing tone of his voice. What he doesn't know is that these sheep are actually super geniuses. Not only do they understand every single word, but they also spend their nights passionately debating whodunit, trying to guess the killer before George reads the final chapter. But there's a catch to the way these sheep think. To cope with the harsh realities of nature, sheep in this universe have a biological superpower. They can literally will themselves to forget anything traumatic. When a predator attacks or a flock mate passes away, they simply force themselves to block it out completely, pretending the lost sheep simply wandered over the hills and transformed into a fluffy white cloud in the sky. To them, death is a fictional concept that only happens to humans in George's books. That is, until one fateful morning. The camera pans across the dew-covered meadow to find George lying completely still in the grass. He isn't sleeping. The flock gathers around in absolute shock as they realize their favorite human is gone. While the other sheep instinctively try to activate their forgetting mechanism to avoid the grief, a sharp-witted ewe named Lily, voiced by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and a stocky ram named Mopple, voiced by Chris O'Dowd, refuse to let it go. Mopple is unique. He was born without the ability to forget, meaning he carries the heavy burden of every sad memory the flock has ever experienced. Lily, the self-proclaimed crime aficionado of the meadow, looks at George's body and realizes this is not a natural passing. It's a real-life murder. Just like in the Agatha Christie novels George read to them, there is a killer on the loose, and the sheep decide right then and there to take matters into their own hooves. As the sun rises higher, the human world finally discovers the tragedy. And this is where the comedy kicks into overdrive. Enter Tim Derry, played by Nicholas Braun, a hilariously incompetent local police officer who fancies himself a master detective but has fewer deduction skills than a bag of rocks. Tim arrives at the crime scene, completely overwhelmed and immediately jumping to the most ridiculous conclusions. Standing beside him is a supposedly helpful, blonde-haired freelance journalist named Elliot Matthews, played by Nicholas Galitzine, who claims he's just in town to write a story about the local farming community. While Tim and Elliot clumsily search the farm for clues, the sheep watch their every move with utter exasperation. The flock consists of a colorful cast of characters. Lily, the brains of the operation, Mopple, the memory keeper with a perpetual craving for snacks, and Sebastian, voiced by Patrick Stewart, a stoic, scarred, one-eared ram whom George rescued from a cruel circus, making him the tough guy of the group. The mystery deepens when George's legal representative, Lydia Harbottle, played by the legendary Emma Thompson, arrives at the farm for the official reading of George's will. The townspeople gather at the local pub, including the sketchy neighboring shepherd Caleb Marrow, the local butcher Him Gilliard, and a mysterious, grieving young woman named Rebecca, played by Molly Gordon, who has just arrived all the way from America. Through the reading of the will, a massive bombshell is dropped on the entire community, and the sheep listening through the open window. It turns out George Hardy wasn't just a poor, simple shepherd. Years ago, he invented a groundbreaking cure for the sheep disease orf and sold the patent to a massive pharmaceutical conglomerate for a staggering $30 million. However, George's relationship with his family was deeply fractured. Years ago, after his wife passed away, his newborn twin children, a son and a daughter, were given up for adoption. Rebecca is his long-lost daughter who traveled across the Atlantic genuinely wanting to connect with her biological father, only to arrive too late. But where is the twin brother? The lawyer reveals that the son, Peter, is currently living somewhere in South Africa and couldn't be reached. But the real kicker in the will is the money. George left his land and his beloved sheep to his children, but the entire $30 million fortune was designated to go to the Society for the Protection of Animals. That is, until a brand new, handwritten codicil suddenly appears in George's paperwork. This new document claims that George changed his mind at the last second, leaving the entire $30 million directly to Rebecca. Suddenly, the spotlight of suspicion swings violently toward the grieving daughter. With $30 million suddenly on the line, the bumbling officer Tim immediately targets Rebecca as his prime suspect. After all, she arrived right before George died, and now she stands to inherit a life-changing fortune. But our woolly detectives aren't buying it. Lily, using her extensive knowledge of mystery tropes, points out that the timing is far too convenient. Why would Rebecca forge a will that immediately paints a massive target on her back? The sheep decide to conduct their own forensic investigation of the meadow. Mopple, using his incredibly sensitive nose, sniffs out a patch of squashed, dark red berries near the fence line. Lily recognizes these as tree berries, highly toxic to humans and animals alike. George didn't die of a sudden illness. He was poisoned. To make matters worse, the real killer has executed a near-perfect frame-up. As Tim and the journalist Elliot investigate Rebecca's temporary lodgings, they discover a pair of her mud-caked boots. When Tim scrapes the soles, he finds the squashed remains of the exact same berries. Despite Rebecca's desperate protests of innocence, Tim proudly cuffs her and drags her off to the local holding cell, believing he has solved the case of a lifetime. The sheep are devastated. They know Rebecca is innocent, and if she goes to prison, the farm will be sold, and they will be left at the mercy of the terrifying neighboring shepherd, Caleb Marrow, and his ruthless business partner, Ham the Butcher. Tension reaches an all-time high when Caleb tries to seize George's vacant pasture. He unleashes his two ferocious, snarling German shepherds to drive George's flock off the land. The sheep are cornered against a steep cliff, with no escape in sight. Just when it seems like the flock is doomed to be torn apart, Sebastian, the brave old circus ram, steps forward. Channeling his inner warrior, Sebastian charges the vicious dogs, using his massive horns and sheer willpower to protect his family. He successfully drives the predators away, saving the flock, but the effort and the injuries he sustains are too much for his old body. Sebastian collapses in the grass. In a deeply moving and tear-jerking scene, the flock gathers around their fallen protector. The younger sheep, unable to handle the intense grief, instantly begin to trigger their forgetting reflex, wiping Sebastian from their minds so they don't have to feel the pain of his loss. But Lily has a profound breakthrough. She looks at Mopple, who is weeping silently because he cannot forget. Lily realizes that while forgetting erases the heartache, it also completely erases the love, the joy, and the lessons that Sebastian gave them. If they forget him, his sacrifice means nothing. Lily decides to break the cycle of denial. She stands up and demands that the flock remember Sebastian, choosing to carry the pain of grief in order to honor the beautiful life of their friend. Inspired by this emotional awakening, the sheep unite with a newfound, fiery determination. They aren't just trying to solve a puzzle anymore. They are fighting for justice for George and for Sebastian. Now operating as a highly coordinated, elite investigative unit, the sheep know they have to get Rebecca out of jail and expose the real killer before she is transferred to a high-security prison in the city. But how does a flock of sheep communicate with a clueless human police officer? They need a plan, and they need it fast. Lily and Mopple recruit the smallest, most agile member of the flock, an adorable, rebellious winter lamb who was born out of season. Under the cover of a foggy English night, the flock sneaks into the village, moving stealthily from shadow to shadow like woolly ninjas. They reach the local police station where Rebecca is being held, while Mopple and the rest of the sheep create a massive, noisy distraction outside, banging against trash cans and bleating loudly to draw the sleepy officer Tim away from his desk. The tiny winter lamb sneaks through a low open window into the evidence room. Earlier that day, the lamb had stepped in the bright blue Orf medicine that George used on the sheep, and his hooves are thoroughly stained. Utilizing the blue dye, the clever lamb walks across a series of documents on Tim's desk, leaving a trail of blue hoof prints that point directly to a critical piece of overlooked evidence: a discarded, dyed blonde hair found near George's body. When Tim returns to his desk, frustrated and confused by the chaotic sheep outside, he notices the blue hoof prints. Though he's incredibly slow on the uptake, the bizarre clue finally forces him to actually look at the forensic details. He realizes that the blonde hair found at the scene doesn't match Rebecca's dark hair. Tim's clumsy friend, the reporter Elliot, suddenly arrives at the station, acting overly eager to see Rebecca packed up and sent away. But Tim, stimulated by the bizarre sheep-painted clue, begins to feel a rare spark of actual detective intuition. He starts asking Elliot highly specific questions about his background. The tension in the tiny police station reaches its boiling point. Tim is stammering, trying to piece the clues together, while Elliot's polite journalist persona begins to rapidly disintegrate, revealing a cold, arrogant, and desperate criminal underneath. Seeing that Tim is on the verge of backing down out of fear, the sheep descend into place. The sheep know science. Specifically, they know color theory. They remember that on the night George was murdered, he had been treating the sheep with the blue medicine, meaning his hands were completely stained with it. When the killer attacked George, a violent struggle ensued. The killer, who had freshly dyed his hair bright yellow to disguise himself as a blonde reporter, had his hair grabbed by George's blue-stained hands. When blue dye mixes with yellow dye, it creates a very distinct, vibrant shade of green. Lily bleats triumphantly, drawing Tim's attention to Elliot's hairline. Sure enough, under the bright fluorescent lights of the police station, the green stain on Elliot's scalp is undeniable. Tim's eyes go wide as he finally connects the dots. Elliot isn't a journalist at all. He is Peter, George's estranged, greedy twin son who traveled secretly from South Africa to steal his father's fortune. Peter had found out about the $30 million patent sale. Realizing his father was leaving the massive fortune to an animal charity, Peter formulated a devilish plan. He disguised himself with yellow hair dye, slipped into town, prepared the toxic berry poison, and waited for his sister Rebecca to visit George. Once Rebecca left, Peter confronted his father, poisoned him, and forged the new will to frame his sister so that he would inherit the entire estate as the sole remaining next of kin once she was convicted. It was a nearly foolproof plan, completely ruined by a flock of genius sheep and a basic lesson in color mixing. Realizing the game is up, Peter tries to bolt, but Mopple delivers a spectacular, full-force headbutt straight to his midsection, sending the greedy killer flying into a pile of laundry bins. Tim quickly swoops in, cuffs Peter, and officially clears Rebecca of all charges. With the mystery officially solved and the villain behind bars, peace finally returns to the beautiful pastures of Denbrook. The final scene of the movie is a beautifully poignant, heartwarming resolution. Rebecca is released from custody, tears of relief streaming down her face. She inherits her late father's land and, more importantly, his beloved flock. Standing in the meadow, surrounded by the sheep who saved her life, Rebecca pulls out George's old medicine kit and gently begins to care for them, signaling that she is ready to step into her father's shoes as their new, loving shepherd. The sheep gather on the highest hill of the pasture, looking up at the sky.